Carnage is a fictional character, a supervillain appearing in books published by Marvel Comics, usually as an enemy of Spider-Man. The character first appeared as Cletus Kasady in The Amazing Spider-Man No. 344 and as Carnage in The Amazing Spider-Man No. 360, and was created by writer David Michelinie and artists Erik, Larsen and Mark Bagley, based on elements of the precursor character Venom. In 2009, Carnage was ranked as IGN's 90th greatest comic book villain of all time. Publication history: writer David Michelinie created Carnage to be a darker version of Venom, intending to have Venom's human alter ego, Eddie Brock, be killed off in The Amazing Spider-Man No. 400 and have the symbiote continue to bond with a series of hosts. However, as Brock and Venom's popularity increased, Marvel would not allow him to be killed. Michelinie decided to create a new character, a total psychopath who, unlike Venom, had no sense of morality. The character was originally meant to be named Chaos, and then Ravage before being settled on Carnage. Carnage's human component, Cletus Kasady, was designed by artist Erik Larsen, who modeled the character after the DC Comics supervillain the Joker. Mark Bagley designed the Carnage symbiote. Cletus Kasady was introduced in The Amazing Spider-Man No. 344 and first appears as Carnage in issue No. 361. He is the main villain in the 1993 Maximum Carnage crossover, a 14-part storyline crossover that spanned through all the Spider-Man titles. In 1996, two one-shot comics centered entirely around Carnage were released, entitled Carnage, Mind Bomb and Carnage, It's a Wonderful Life, both of which expand on his character. After a 2004 appearance in New Avengers, the character was presumed dead and was absent from comics for nearly 6 years. A 2010-2011 limited series titled Carnage featured the return of the symbiote, where it temporarily found a new female host before reuniting with Kasady. The comic was released as a tie-in to the big-time storyline in The Amazing Spider-Man. This was followed by another 5-issue limited series titled Carnage USA and published 2011-2012. Carnage was next seen in the 2012 Minimum Carnage crossover storyline between Scarlet Spider Volume 2, Venom Volume 2, and two one-shots titled Minimum Carnage Alpha and Minimum Carnage Omega. He is said to return in the Superior Carnage storyline. Fictional character biography: Cletus Kasady is a psychopath and a homicidal sadist. Kasady is a deeply disturbed individual with a dark past. As a child, he killed his grandmother by pushing her down a flight of stairs, tried to murder his mother by throwing a television into her bathtub, and tortured and killed his mother's dog. After the latter, his mother then tried to kill Cletus, and was apparently beaten to the brink of death by Kasady's father, who received no defense from Kasady during his trial. As an orphan, Kasady was sent to the St. Est's Home for Boys, where his antisocial behavior made him the target of abuse from both the other orphans and the staff. Kasady gained revenge by murdering the disciplinarian administrator, pushing a girl in front of a moving bus, and burning down the orphanage. It was during his brutal years at St. Est's that Kasady acquired his philosophy that life was essentially meaningless and futile, that laws are only words, and came to see the spreading of chaos through random, unpatterned bloodshed as the ultimate freedom. Rebirth: Kasady became a serial killer. He was then captured and sent to Rikers Island prison for 11 murders though he bragged of a dozen more, where he shared a cell with Eddie Brock, who had lost the alien symbiote that transformed him into the supervillain Venom. Brock's symbiote soon returned and bonded with him again, and unwittingly left behind the symbiote's offspring. The new symbiote then entered Kasady's bloodstream through a cut and bonded with his blood, transforming him into Carnage. He escaped prison, and began a series of murders, and at the scene of each crime, wrote Carnage on the walls with his own blood. He was found by Spider-Man, though the hero proved to be no match for Carnage's powers. In desperation, Spider-Man made a truce with Venom to fight Carnage. Carnage was defeated with sonic weaponry, but the symbiote lived on because it is merged with Kasady's bloodstream. Maximum Carnage. Kasady is taken to the Vault, a prison for supervillains then Ravencroft Institute, a facility for the superhuman criminally insane. a doctor at the facility, hoping to find a cure for his madness, draws blood from him unwittingly enabling Kasady to morph into Carnage who goes on to recruit an army of psychopathic supervillains including Shriek, Demogoblin, Carrion, and Doppelganger to take over New York City. Using Shriek's psychic channel powers, he also drives ordinary New Yorkers to attack one another. Carnage and his family are ultimately driven back by Spider-Man, Venom, and a number of other superheroes and super antiheroes, with Carnage and Shriek being remanded to Ravencroft. Web of Carnage. During a subsequent jailbreak, he made it his mission to kill his only childhood friend, Billy Bentmere hoping to refute the notion that friendship should be paid in kind. Carnage nearly defeated Spider-Man until Ben time-tricked Carnage into reverting to human form, enabling Spider-Man to knock out Kasady with a simple punch. Though bonded to Cletus Kasady's bloodstream, the symbiote found a way to ditch its host by traveling through the Institute's water pipes, overwhelming Ravencroft's chief, John Jameson, and using him to commit further murders. It eventually transferred itself to Spider-Man Ben Reilly at the Tamir when Ben bonded with it in order to prevent it hurting any innocent people, creating Spider-Carnage. Ben's willpower held out against the symbiote's murderous desires long enough for him to return it to Ravencroft. Reilly subsequently attempted to destroy the symbiote by subjecting himself to a potentially lethal blast of microwaves, but it escaped back to Kasady after the microwaves forced it to separate from him. Cosmic Carnage. During a subsequent rampage, the Carnage symbiote briefly attempted to take control of the Silver Surfer, who was visiting Earth at the time to welcome the Fantastic Four after their return to life following the battle with Onslaught. The Surfer and Spider-Man were able to return the symbiote to Kasady, and the Surfer then sealed Kasady in an unbreakable prison in an attempt to force him to reflect on his sins for eternity. Death and Resurrection. Having tracked Kasady to a prison specially designed to hold him how he escaped the Surfer's prison has yet to be established. Venom eventually reabsorbs the Carnage symbiote into his own body for good. Without the symbiote, Kasady attempts to reassume the Carnage persona by costuming himself in red paint and continuing his killing sprees, claiming that he still possesses at least some of Carnage's strength and convinced that he only needs to kill Spider-Man and Venom to regain his symbiote, but Spider-Man nevertheless easily defeats him in a fight. Kasady, however, eventually finds another symbiote who had been kept sealed in the negative zone, and bonded with it to form the second Carnage. Toxin. In Venom vs. Carnage No. 1-4, the Carnage symbiote reproduces, with Kasady implanting a spawn of it into Patrick "Paddy" Mulligan, an Irish-American police officer who was recently married and expecting a child. Mulligan became Toxin who single-handedly overpowered both Venom and Carnage. Nevertheless, Mulligan remained determined to use his newfound powers for good, learning as much as he can from Spider-Man while leaving behind his wife and newborn son in order to protect them from danger. Breakout. In New Avengers No. 2, Carnage is one of several supervillains trying to escape from the raft. Sentry flies Carnage outside the Earth's atmosphere and rips him in two. Family Feud. It is later discovered that, although Kasady was presumably killed, the symbiote survived by becoming dormant and returned to Earth. The Doppelganger and Shriek return, hoping to repair the symbiote. Using the properties of the symbiote, Michael Hall, a competitor of Tony Stark, creates prosthetic limbs and exosuits which respond in the same ways as a symbiote. One such person, Dr. Tanis Nives, is outfitted with one of these prosthetic arms after she is caught in an attack by the Doppelganger. When near the symbiote, her arm goes wild and forces her to kill several scientists before the symbiote forcefully bonds to her, becoming the new Carnage. After the symbiote uses Tanis to break into a Hall Corporation facility, it is revealed that Cletus Kasady is alive, his body preserved by the symbiote and repaired by Hall's prosthetics. Kasady reclaims the symbiote and becomes Carnage once more, attempting to avenge his captivity while Spider-Man and Iron Man struggle to stop him. It is then revealed that Carnage is once again pregnant, and the suit spawn briefly bonds to Shriek before being torn from her. Scared of Shriek's malice, the symbiote arm then bonds to Tanis, creating a new hero, Scorn, who defeats Shriek and forces her to use her sonic shriek to weaken Carnage for Spider-Man and Iron Man. Carnage, however, escapes with the doppelganger and swears to make a bloody comeback. Carnage USA. In the aftermath of his return, Carnage sets off west to Doverton, Colorado. He bonds most of the town to copies of his symbiote. Captain America, Spider-Man, Wolverine, Hawkeye and the Thing attempt to defeat him, but all except Spider-Man are bonded to copies. With the Avengers team compromised and Spider-Man out of communication, they send in another team consisted of symbiote-enhanced special forces. Dr. Tarn's Niv's Scorn goes along with the separated parts of Hybrid which make up Agony, Phage, Riot, and Lasher, but they are heavily outnumbered since Carnage controls the entire town. Captain America breaks free of his hold long enough to make an emergency call for backup to none other than Venom. Flash Thompson in the Venom symbiote sets off to Colorado to kill Carnage. The enhanced special forces keep fighting but Carnage sends the controlled Avengers after them. Then was when Spider-Man comes with the unaffected residents of the town. The melee is particularly fierce when Venom intervenes with sonic rounds. Venom is about to kill Carnage with a gun in the mouth but Spider-Man stops him. Before Venom or Carnage can recover, Scorn uses a construction vehicle to carry the two to a device she built. She reveals that her device is meant to permanently remove the bonds from Carnage and Venom, but the hosts are still in there, leaving a legless Flash Thompson alone with Cletus Kasady. After the symbiotes fighting with themselves and the Avengers team, Venom finds its way back to Flash Thompson while Scorn is able to capture and contain the Carnage symbiote. The series ends with Cletus being captured and dragged into the back of a prison vehicle. Minimum Carnage. Carnage escapes prison yet again with the help of Microns. Venom is sent to the prison and discovers Kasady has escaped. Carnage flees to Houston, Texas and causes havoc, attracting the attention of the Scarlet Spider. Carnage takes the scientist Dr. Kitola, an expert in interdimensional transportation, as a hostage and escapes into the microverse. He is defeated by Venom and Scarlet Spider, who use a sonic bomb from the microverse to temporarily separate Kasady from the symbiote. Scarlet Spider then impales Kasady through the eye, lobotomizing him. Carnage goes into a catatonic state. The symbiote is keeping his body alive, similar to a life support system, but Kasady's brain and mind are believed to be irreparably damaged, leaving the symbiote in control. Superior Carnage. Kasady, now lobotomized, is later broken out of prison by the Wizard and Claw, who intend to recruit him into the Frightful Four and turn him into their own version of Agent Venom. Carnage breaks free from the Wizard's control and nearly kills him, but is subdued by Claw. Taking Carnage into their hideout, the Wizard tries to take control of Cletus' mind, but fails due to it being too damaged. The Wizard then transfers the symbiote to Dr. Carl Malus. Dr. Malus was enraged and under the influences of the symbiote tried to kill his teammates, but he was subdued by Claw and controlled by the Wizard, who renames him Superior Carnage, and equips him with weapons. Malus tells Claw not to be fooled as while he is forced to obey the Wizard, if his control slips the symbiote will take control and turn against them. After taking all the weapons and starting to move to the City Hall, the Wizard blows up the hideout with Kasady still inside, seemingly killing him. While storming the City Hall, Superior Carnage states that Kasady was a fool who wasted so much time on chaos while there was much more to be accomplished with a little focus. However, when the Wizard's control slips for a moment, Carnage begins to revert to his original form until the Wizard regains himself. The trio are confronted by the Superior Spider-Man and during their battle the Wizard loses his control over Carnage and fatally injured. Carnage, now free, goes on a rampage and starts to kill anyone in front of him. Claw tries to stop him, but due to his weapon being damaged he fails and realizes that the only way is for the Wizard to take back control. Both Carnage and Claw make their way outside. Carnage fights the Superior Spider-Man and admits that although he liked using weapons, for him ripping and slashing the bodies is better. Claw tries to get the Wizard to control Carnage again, but is killed by Carnage and the explosion separates the symbiote from its host, only to bond with the injured Wizard. Ultimately, Spider-Man brings out Cletus' body to successfully draw the symbiote into it, which then prepares to finish off the wizard. However, Claw focuses his sound manipulation powers one last time for a split second to create a powerful sonic blast that disables Carnage, allowing the symbiote to be recaptured. In the epilogue it is shown that the symbiote has managed to repair the wizard's and Cletus' brain damage, followed by Kasady writing Carnage rules on his cell wall. A piece of the symbiote escapes containment and sets out in search of Cletus, who is bedridden due to having been stabbed by a fellow prison inmate. A doctor, anticipating that the symbiote will come seeking Cletus, smothers the killer in the infirmary, wanting the alien for himself. When the symbiote breaks into the facility, the doctor offers himself to the creature, but it rejects him, and returns to Cletus after resuscitating him. Carnage proceeds to asphyxiate the doctor, rampage through the prison, and escape. Powers and abilities. As Eddie Brock explained, the Carnage symbiote was born with abilities even more singular than those of its progenitor due to the fact that it gestated in an environment alien to Earth. The alien symbiote endows Cletus Kasady with enhanced physical strength greater than that of Spider-Man and Venom combined, and shape-shifting abilities, allows him to project a web-like substance from any part of his body including the formation of weapons, and enables him to plant thoughts into a person's head using a symbiote tendril. Much like Spider-Man, Kasady has the ability to cling to virtually any surface, and has a version of Spider-Man's spider sense, as the symbiote can relay information to him from any angle and grants Kasady the ability to see in any direction, warning him of incoming threats. He can rapidly crawl, walk, or run across even slick surfaces. The Carnage symbiote has similar abilities of that of Spider-Man's as a direct result of the Venom symbiote's first host, Peter Parker, who transferred some of Spider-Man's power into the symbiote. He is able to rapidly regenerate damaged body tissues much faster and more extensively than an ordinary human. It is not known, however, if he can fully regenerate severed limbs or missing internal organs. He was fitted with artificial legs after being torn apart by the Sentry, but this occurred while he was separated from the symbiote. Kasady is also immune to the effects of all earthly diseases and infections as long as he remains bonded with the symbiote. Like Venom, the symbiote is vulnerable to sound and heat, and is undetectable to Spider-Man's spider sense. Unlike Venom, Carnage can launch parts of his symbiote at enemies in the form of solid weapons such as darts, spears, knives, axes, etc., although they disintegrate into dust within 10 seconds of leaving Carnage's body. Carnage also has the strange ability to warp his appendages into different arms, legs, and even wings. This is shown on several occasions when Carnage mutates his fingers and arms into what look like large swords. Kasady has full control over the size, shape, color, texture, and hardness of his symbiote. Like Venom, he can make his symbiote look like normal clothing, or act as camouflage. With the symbiote bonded to his bloodstream, he can regenerate his costume from scratch simply by bleeding. His symbiote has the peculiar ability to block its parent's ability to sense and track it. The symbiote is also able to rapidly adapt to new environments. When Kasady was taken into space by the Sentry, the Carnage symbiote was able to save his life by growing small sacs around his mouth that converted carbon dioxide into oxygen, allowing Kasady to stay alive long enough for him to be recovered. In some interpretations, the Carnage symbiote is vampiric, feeding on and thus endangering his victims by only a mere touch. The symbiote has also shown the ability to call back parts of itself back to the main symbiote, adding it to the parts that already make up the symbiote. It can also send commands that cannot be resisted to parts of itself that are in technology, used to break the bones of the Iron Rangers when they challenged Carnage while wearing symbiote-enhanced technological exosuits. Using these last two abilities, Carnage absorbed the 5 Iron Rangers, and consequently grew to an enormous size and assumed the color blue. Finally, Carnage's powers have always been abnormally enhanced from the maniacal will and insane worldview that Cletus Kasady has had from the age of 8 years old onward. Kasady sees chaos, and random, undirected violence as reality, and considers order and virtue to be illusions. He takes an almost artistic pride in his mayhem, likes to leave a trail for others to follow, and is recklessly willing to take on the most dangerous and powerful of opponents and victims. Kasady is essentially taking revenge on the whole world for the tormentor both real and imagined of his childhood. Other hosts, aside from Cletus Kasady, the Carnage symbiote bonds with Ben Reilly, creating Spider Carnage, and later with the Silver Surfer to become Carnage Cosmic. Later the suit forcefully bonds itself to Dr. Tarney's Nivs after the apparent death of Cletus, in the process becoming the third Carnage. In every case, however, the symbiote eventually returns to Cletus Kasady. One storyline saw a doctor deliberately trying to claim the symbiote for himself by killing Kasady while he was separated from the symbiote, but the symbiote bypassed him to restore Kasady. Other versions, Exiles, the Earth-15 psychotic Peter Parker and Carnage combine to become the Spider, and becomes a member of Weapon X in Exiles. MC2, in the MC2 future timeline, Carnage bonds with Spider-Girl's friend, Moose Mansfied. He also infects Spider-Girl's little brother, Ben, turning him into a miniature version of himself. Spider-Girl uses the sonic blasters of the villain Reverb to destroy all traces of the symbiote. In a later timeline, samples of the symbiote are used to create biopods, living weapons that the government used to try to stop Mayhem, Spider-Girl's part symbiote clone, who, after killing the real Spider-Girl, became a murderous vigilante, eventually killing the hero American Dream. The biopods run wild, however, decimating the world and its defenders. Mayhem, seeing the error of her ways, goes back in time and sacrifices herself to stop her past self from killing Spider-Girl, ensuring the events that led to the biopod's creation never occurred. Ultimate Carnage, the Ultimate Marvel version of Carnage, is a self-regenerating vampiric organism based on the symbiotic suit research of Richard Parker, created by Curt Connors, and consists of his own DNA and that of Peter Parker, which at the time contained samples of the Venom symbiote. When Carnage was first introduced, he was a blob of instinct, with no intelligence or self-awareness, with his only aim to feed on the DNA of others to stabilize himself. This incarnation kills Gwen Stacy, forcing Peter Parker to give up being Spider-Man once he defeats the monster. After feeding on multiple people, Carnage turns into a damaged form of Richard Parker. Carnage and Parker battle and Peter throws the beast into a fire factor steel chimney, killing it. After the laboratory is closed, Ben Reilly takes the second sample of Parker's blood. Ultimate Carnage's appearance is based on Venom, Peter Parker, Curt Connors, and Gwen Stacy. In its monster form, Carnage resembles his original incarnation, such as its large eyes and fangs, as well as the lizard's claws. In addition, the center of its body glows yellow. But after assuming Gwen's form, Carnage loses this glow in its monstrous form. In its human form, Carnage resembles Richard in its first appearance and Gwen in its second. The Carnage symbiote was absorbed by Eddie Brock, leaving Gwen and returning her to a healthy duplicate of the original. Intercompany crossover, Carnage teams up with and later turns against the Joker during Spider-Man and Batman #1, the two men meeting when behavioral psychiatrist Cassandra Breyer attempts to use the two men regarded as humanity's most twisted minds as tests for a chip she has developed that will allegedly lobotomize their homicidal instincts. However, the Carnage symbiote neutralizes Kasady's chip after it is implanted, with Kasady simply pretending that the chip had worked so that he could meet the Joker. After Carnage removes Joker's chip, the two psychotics briefly enter into an alliance before their differing methods of murder cause a clash. Carnage favors numbers and actually seeing the death of his victims close up in his murder sprees, while the Joker prefers the artistry of his usual traps and tricks, Carnage dismissing the Joker's methods as slow while Joker sees Carnage as an amateur, as anyone can just go out and kill people. Carnage responds by ambushing and threatening to kill Batman in order to be theatrical. Carnage is defeated by Batman in the subsequent fight when he loses control of his symbiote while panicking after the Joker threatens to set off a bomb to destroy Gotham himself and Carnage included rather than see Carnage kill Batman. While defeating the shaken Kasady after his panic causes him to lose control of the symbiote, Batman reflects that many serial killers kill so many to try to escape death themselves by appeasing the Grim Reaper with their own sacrifices, and that Carnage far from being a monster or even a common street punk is little more than an overgrown little boy, albeit with lethal powers. Carnage was also used in DC and Marvel's Amalgam Comics, where he was amalgamated with Bizarro into Bizarnage, an adversary of Spider-Boy who appeared in his only issue. In other media, television, Carnage appears in Spider-Man, the animated series, voiced by Scott Cleverdon. Never shown killing anyone but still a madman with a heavy criminal record, Cletus Kasady first appeared in the episode Venom Returns, where he is captured by the police after planning to explode a bomb over New York. In prison, he shares a cell with Eddie Brock. In the episode Venom Returns, the Venom symbiote finds Brock in prison and rebonds with him and escapes. Baron Mordo, servant of Dormammu, appears in front of Cletus with the Carnage symbiote and explains that it has the same power as Venom. He makes a deal with Cletus to have the symbiote power in exchange for serving Dormammu. Cletus accepts the offer and bonds with the symbiote, turning into Carnage and then escapes the prison. Venom and Carnage are given vampiric powers to steal life energy for Dormammu so that he can escape into this dimension and consume it. Carnage mockingly calls Venom Dad. In the episode The Haunting of Mary Jane Watson, a robotic version of Carnage appeared in Mysterio's underground hideout. In the series finale, Spider-Men from different dimensions undertake a mission to stop an alternate Spider-Man that has bonded with the Carnage symbiote and become the omnicidal Spider-Carnage. Carnage appears in Spider-Man Unlimited, voiced by Michael Donovan. Cletus Kasady makes a non-speaking cameo appearance in the Spectacular Spider-Man episode Reinforcement as a patient wearing a Santa Claus hat in Ravencroft during a group therapy session with Dr. Octopus and Electro when Kraven the Hunter attacks to break out the two villains. Carnage was originally set to appear had the series been renewed for another season. Carnage appears in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon series episode Carnage, voiced by D. Bradley Baker, reprising his role from the 2000 Spider-Man video game. This version is created by Green Goblin using key components of the Goblin formula, and Harry Osborn's blood sample of the Venom symbiote, has a red tongue, makes a screeching noise, and can turn his body spiky. When Green Goblin injects Peter Parker with the mixture, Peter's spider cells makes the Venom organism unstable and imperfect, thus forming Carnage with Peter as its host. Green Goblin, approving of his new son, sends Carnage to eliminate Spider-Man and his friends. After a battle with Spider-Man's friends' teammates, Carnage defeats them all. However, Harry allows the Carnage symbiote to attach to him, reverting to its previous Venom form. Video games: Carnage is a boss character in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man X-Men, Arcade's Revenge, The Amazing Spider-Man, Lethal Foes, and Spider-Man and Venom, Maximum Carnage and its sequel Venom Spider-Man, Separation Anxiety. Carnage is the final boss in the 2000 Spider-Man video game, voiced by D. Bradley Baker. He assists Dr. Octopus in a plot to establish a symbiote invasion. After Spider-Man defeats Carnage, the symbiote leaves Kasady and attaches itself to Dr. Octopus, turning him into the Monster Ock. It destroys much of the underwater base when chasing Spider-Man. When the base explodes, the symbiote protects Dr. Octopus from harm before detaching itself from him and retreating back into the collapsing facility. Carnage appears in the Ultimate Spider-Man video game. This version is Peter Parker injected with micro-symbiotes by Adrian Toomes. It breaks free and fights Venom. After being defeated, Venom absorbs the Carnage symbiote into himself, giving him complete control over the suit. Carnage is a playable character in the PSP version of Spider-Man, Friend or Foe, voiced by Fred Tatasciore. At the end of the game, Nick Fury dubs the research of the Meteor Shards project, Carnage. Carnage is a playable character in Marvel, Ultimate Alliance 2, voiced again by Fred Tatasciore. The character is only available for download and is the first downloadable content character outside of the 6 characters to be featured in an updated version for the PS3 and Xbox. The DLC pack was at first removed but recently became available once more until December 2010. The DLC also includes an extra mission where the player fights Carnage after fighting several other bosses from the game. Spider-Carnage appears as an alternate costume for Spider-Man in the Wii version of Spider-Man, Web of Shadows. Ultimate Carnage appears as a villain in the final Ultimate Marvel segment in Spider-Man, Shattered Dimensions, voiced again by Fred Tatasciore. A clone derived from Peter Parker's DNA and the Venom symbiote, Carnage has been captured by SHIELD and brought to the Chskelian, along with a fragment from the Tablet of Order and Chaos. SHIELD began experimenting on Carnage and the fragment, combining them in hopes of creating a new kind of energy. Carnage absorbs the fragment and escapes containment, draining everyone he comes across of energy and using the power of the tablet to reanimate them as mindless zombies. Spider-Man pursues Carnage throughout the burning ruins of the Chskelian, dealing with the villain's spawn and Spider-Slayers armed with flamethrowers. Cornering his target on the highest floor of the Chskelian and gaining the assistance of some reprogrammed Spider-Slayers, Ultimate Spider-Man defeats Carnage and retrieves the final fragment, leaving the creature pinned under rubble. During the credits, Carnage is shown posing for pictures in prison. Carnage appears in LEGO Marvel Super-Heroes, as a playable character, voiced by Dave Boat. Carnage appears in the 2014 video game The Amazing Spider-Man 2, voiced by David Agronov. After Spider-Man chooses to save a civilian before chasing Carradine, Cletus kills Carradine shortly and gives a sign of CK mark from his full name before Spider-Man shows up, only to find Carradine's dead body. The police referred to him as the Carnage Killer. After Spider-Man tracks him down with aid and training from Kraven the Hunter, he discovers Cletus as he is about to kill a civilian who saw him killing someone else. Although Kraven wants him to let Cletus kill his target so that Spider-Man can continue to track Cletus during his training, Spider-Man stops Cletus and sends him to the police. Cletus is somehow brought to Ravencroft for an experiment by Kingpin and Oscorp which transforms into Carnage. He later creates hives on Ravencroft and even infects most of the people, including Kingpin's forces. Even though he is fully transformed into Carnage, he is still defeated by Spider-Man, when the suit is burned by fires started within the base. The game concluding with Kasady in custody. Carnage has been announced to appear as a boss in the Facebook game Marvel, Avengers Alliance. Attractions: The Universal Orlando Resort's 2002 Halloween Horror Nights featured a haunted maze entitled Maximum Carnage. The maze was designed to be a trip through Carnage's hideout and contained all his henchmen and the remains of various superheroes. The house was located in Island Under Siege, formerly Marvel's Superhero Island. Carnage also was the icon chosen to represent that specific island for the event. The event's main icon, the Caretaker, chose him based on his disregard for life and desire to see total chaos. Music: The song Carnage Rules by Green Jello, which is featured as the first song on their album 333, is written about the character and is used as the theme song for the Maximum Carnage video game. Theater: Carnage appears in the Spider-Man, Turn Off the Dark musical as a member of the Sinister Six and is played by Colin Barger. References: External links: Carnage at the Marvel Universe Wiki, brief bio at spiderfan.org, Carnage checklist at thevenomsite.com.